with Katie Wyndham and Joey Blackwell. I am Mason Smith, and this is Three and Out. Guys, the Heisman finalists have just been released, and among them is Caleb Williams, C.J. Stroud, Max Duggan, and Stetson Bennett. Of course, one familiar name that's left off that list is Bryce Young. Now, we don't know in terms of the full top 10 finalists in terms of where Bryce Young will finish. But Katie, starting with you, do you think that Bryce Young got snubbed?
I don't think when, you look at Bryce's stats this year that you could honestly say he got snubbed. I think, him getting hurt and missing time kind of hurt his odds because he wasn't able to have as good of stats. If you also kind of look at Alabama's first couple games of the year when they were playing, not as good of teams, he didn't put up a ton of passing yards. Alabama kind of ran the ball more. And so he already, early on wasn't on pace to put up the same number of stats. And then obviously getting hurt that. He also played one less game this year than he did last year, did not play in the SEC championship game. So realistically, when you look at his stats, did he deserve to be invited back to New York? Probably not. And we've seen, it's tough. It's been tough for people to, repeat as Heisman Trophy winners. It's only happened one time in history, even though a lot over the last decade or so, there's been guys that have won it as sophomores or juniors that could have that definitely come back and win it another year, including Bryce Young, and he wasn't able to do that this year. I think if you go by the logic of the Nagurski Trophy, where Will Anderson repeated this year as he was the best defensive player in college football last year, he's still playing college football this year. So that means he's the best defensive player in college football, even though he didn't put up the same number of stats. I think you could say the same thing for Bryce Young. Could you make an argument that Bryce Young is still the best player in college football? I think you definitely could. I saw an interesting tweet yesterday that, every time he got the ball in the fourth quarter of Alabama games, he didn't leave the field with Alabama trailing. He always led them on game-winning drives, and then the defense would give things up or whatever. But, he did a lot of magic for the Crimson Tide this year. He obviously did a lot last year, being the first Alabama quarterback to win the Heisman. But statistically, could you argue that he was a Heisman finalist? No. Watching his play on the field, could you argue that he should have been? Maybe. But as you said, Mason, we're not exactly sure where he finished in the Heisman voting. And I guess we'll see that the night of the show. They'll probably release it on ESPN.
Well, Katie, you kind of stole my Nagurski Trophy point that I was going to make there. That's a very valid point. But yeah, I think people need to realize that the Heisman Trophy, at least historically, is supposed to be more than just stats. That's not supposed to be the primary focus. Like, yes, that is definitely a component. On the field performance is definitely a huge part of that. But it's also about leadership. It's about your actions off the field. It's about, just how you conduct yourself. Bryce Young obviously fits all those categories. That was, I think, also played a big factor on top of his stats from last year, why he was able to win. This year, though, looking at the finalists, I think three of the four are deserving. I think Hendon Hooker really deserved a nod, after his incredible season that he had with Tennessee. But this is about Bryce Young. I think at the end of the day, he will finish in the top 10. Don't get me wrong, but I think that because of his injury that forced him to be missed basically 2 full games, and then the 3 or 4 games after that took him to recover, while Bill O'Brien was heavily running the ball because of Bryce Young's injury and his recovery time. That just caused his stats not only to go down, but even from the beginning of the season, he wasn't having as productive of a year just because the wide receivers haven't been as consistent as they were last year. There was a drop off there. And so just all this combination of factors, a player very rarely wins a Heisman by themselves. They usually have to have a really strong supporting cast around them. And for Bryce Young this year, between the offensive line and between the wide receivers this year, he just didn't have the cast that he did last year. That being said, he's still a fantastic quarterback. He's still going to be a top 10 pick in the NFL draft, regardless of whether he plays in the Sugar Bowl or not. But he was worth a nod. I don't think he was worth, actually winning the thing this year.
I think it's kind of funny we mentioned that there are 4 quarterbacks that got selected over Bryce Young for the Heisman finalists, but Bryce might be the first quarterback taken off the board in next year's NFL draft. There's a strong possibility of that. But that wraps up 3 and Out with Joey Blackwell, Katie Wyndham. I am Mason Smith. Thank you so much for watching.